Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides. It's my actual job title and last name, which is part of the reason why the mathematical model that I've built to predict various sports outcomes is affectionately known as Sideline. You'll hear more about the model during the course of this episode. It's set to cover the 6 best college basketball games. Again, it's like yesterday. About half the games, we don't know who's playing it yet. It's the 6 best of what we got. It's a weak slate, but there are some great money-making opportunities to be had here on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. In case you're here, check out the webpage on the band. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. See the Google Sheet link in the show description for Sidelines projection on every single game. Remember, this show covers picks on the best games for the best picks on all games, all those A-grade picks on the money line that have been tearing it up as of late. Hit us up on Patreon or Black Book Sports. Those links are in the show description. We got a lot of different packages and price ranges based on exactly what you are looking for. Remember, sports are unpredictable, so the discussion on this show projects a typical game and does not try to forecast it to a T, as that would be a foolish and impossible goal. We take a long-term view around here. We don't get distracted with teams either can't hit or can't miss from three, or when everybody decides to lose by 1 point on buzzer-beating shots and half-court shots, and Eastern Washington, who broke my heart yesterday. In other words, understand that please understand the good and bad variants will occur. So as much as I'd like to say it'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, I say that every day, and I mean, yesterday was Sunday. We're recording this on Monday for Tuesday. Teams don't know how Monday went yet, but Sunday was the definition of bad variance with all those 1 point losses. I kind of mentioned a little bit this yesterday, but Eastern Washington just took the cake. That leading by 6 inside a minute, and then the way they just that 3-pointer, that guy just launched it.
I'm not sure he saw the rim, to be honest. I think he's like, it's there somewhere.
There was a big guy in his face. I mean, yeah. I couldn't quite tell from the angle, was he right in his face or to his side? Yeah. But I mean, there was a big guy that was there. It's just throwing it up, and it makes it fun, but it also sometimes can break your heart, right? It's just
that's why this is why everybody's favorite sporting event is just March Madness, because it's just the best, because you get stuff like that. It's a terrible way to decide who's your best team. Yeah. But it's an incredible viewing experience because you get craziness like that.
Because just for that tournament, again, it should have been Eastern Washington, Montana State, dueling it out for who gets to go represent the conference. And now one of those is out. Maybe Montana State will at least take it. But yeah, like you said, if you're trying to get your best team to March, you got to protect. We talked about this. You got to protect your 1s and 2s, all those double, triple, quadruple buy stuff. If you want your better teams, you got to protect them. And they didn't do a very good job of protecting their best team. Some people say, oh, they lost or whatever. But I mean, nobody would ever say that one game tells you if you're the better or worse team. They lost in one game, and it makes it fun. It's exciting, but again, I'm not much on the they didn't show it on the court nonsense. They were one of the best teams in that conference, and wonky things happen, and you want to try to make it such that your better teams end up towards the end. And so it's fun for us for the wonkiness, but it's not great for the conference in my opinion. But it's just
No, it really isn't, because that hurts your seed and hurts your chance to get a little bit more cash. But I mean, that's why whatever Gonzaga conference, Gonzaga and St. Mary's
West Coast,
their conference goes like, hey, if you're 1 or 2, you get like 9 buys before you have to play.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones. We're seeing it now in the Southland as well. It's that same sort of thing. It's like four teams played, and then 2 more came in, and then 2 more are coming in now. That's the same sort of thing where they're it's good for them for protecting their top teams.
Well, I mean, was it you the Conference USA that has like a block schedule part where their top 4 teams just play each other, and they just kind of rotate that towards the end of the year to keep from a mistake like that happening and tanking somebody's chances?
I had not seen that, but that sounds interesting. I can't
remember what conference was doing that.
Yeah, I just know that at some point years ago, the MAC, I think, was the first one to do this like triple or quadruple buy thing, and it kind of has become not the norm, but it's happening. Yeah, the I guess it's the Big West. I think is that conference not the Big West, the Mountain, the Sky, Big Sky. There you go. Is the one that Eastern Washington that did do it in that class. And so it was a lot of fun if you had the underdog there, but all that rambling. I'm a professor, right? I ramble, is to say that stuff happens, and we're not going to let that distract us. We're going to keep focused on the process here, and get a lot of good picks today for Tuesday's slate. But before we get to that, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and if you turn on notifications, don't miss any college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. I've already mentioned the Patreon, but check it out if you haven't yet. A lot of great benefits found over there above and beyond. We do here. $3 per month gets you the play of the day. For another $2 a month, you get all the model picks. You get what number the model needs in order for it to be an A-grade play on the spread or the money line. A lot of fun over there on the Discord chat as well. www.patreon.com/picksprofessor gets you more details. But even if you're not there, still thrilled to have you here. Let's get to it. But as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Jake, I'm excited now. We are to the point where we've got daytime games every day. They're going to start picking up. It's going to be a fun week. We're going to cover a few of those here. This is not a typo here. 10:30 a.m. Eastern. If you live out on the West Coast, at 7:30 in the morning, like, are you even awake at this point? Like, I don't know, depending on your job, maybe you are. This is going to be an early one. It might be a little sleepy with regards to the pace and the scoring. Some of these early games throws kids off their routine, so you never really know. But I like Richmond here, minus 118. This is a B grade pick, according to the model. Not quite to an A grade. It would require minus 109 for an A grade, so about another dime cheaper here. But I've got Richmond winning this 57% of the time on average by about 2.4 points. So I think this should be about 2.5 instead of the current 2. It's interesting that you see that minus 2 would not be nearly as strong a play. Talk about sometimes there's some differences here between the money line and the spread here. The money line price at minus 118 is a pretty good deal for a 2-point favorite. This should be higher. And so again, minus 118 is a great investment here on Richmond. B grade pick. With regards to total, again, I mentioned it might be a little bit sleepy because of the time. You never know how that's going to play out. Price I'm seeing right now is the total I'm seeing right now is 141.5. Model does say 138.7. I would be looking under just because the time. Again, the model thinks under as well. You have a UMass team that's going to really try to press the tempo extremely fast, but Richmond's going to try to take the air out of the ball. And usually we talk about it's easier to speed a team up than slow a team down. I'm not sure that holds at 10:30 in the morning, right? That's when everything goes out the window with regards to that. I would lean under, but again, my favorite play here, Richmond minus 118 is a steal. Model says the right price should be minus 133. So as long as you're in the minus 1 teens, minus 120s or low minus 130s, you're a pretty good investment here on the Spiders. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, look, I think this has been another disappointing year. I think they had a little bit higher expectations and things coming in than being 500 on the year and 6-12 in conference. They're close to that. I mean, UMass is right there too. I'm not sure what
UMass had such a great start to the season too, and just kind of they had a lot of injuries, and it was tough. All those injuries really did.
I don't want to say it's been. Yeah, I don't want to say it's been disappointing for them because, I mean, you can blame it on the injuries, but it's not been great. And they did beat Richmond early in the year at home by 9. Like, neither team here is going to impress. They're both very good free throw shooting teams and get to the line often. The difference in the game is going to be the turnovers. UMass has a big turnover problem. That's really going to hurt their pace because they're going to hand the ball to Richmond, and Richmond's going to be able to just suck the life out of the game. Being at 10:30 in the morning, I expect some dumb mistakes, especially early on from either team. But I think that benefits Richmond more than it benefits UMass because UMass will end up turning it over anyway, where Richmond's not really that big of a turnover game. Just the slow pace. Richmond's got the talent. They had the higher. They were a pretty good team last year. Brought a lot of people back. They've got a lot more talent here. I think they will be able to pull this off. I do like the minus 118 a lot better than minus 2 because with the way both these teams shoot free throws, laying any kind of points, I think this will be a toss-up game. Makes me very nervous.
Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about the early start times. I cannot emphasize this enough. I know they've had a couple of days to prep for this time, but Jake, imagine if all of a sudden we were like, oh, you have to wake up at 2 a.m. and start doing your job then. Oh, sure. What if I gave you 3 days to prep for that? You'd still be kind of a zombie, right? Or the other way around. What if I was like, oh, all of a sudden we're going to, you're going to have to do, your top-notch work at, 10:30 at night. I mean, even if you had a couple days to prep for it, it still might not work great. Your routines are off. These athletes are creatures have. And there's some of you listening to this that are like, I could totally do that. And absolutely, there are people who can do that, but it's not a thing that most people can handle, especially athletes being creatures of habit. We always see a little bit less score, a little bit, like I said, more mistakes, sloppier play. It just throws you off a little bit. And like I said, there are people out there who can handle it, but it's not an easy thing to do playing this early.
It's weird times to eat too, because you got to eat at the right time so that way you're not like heavy or starving during the middle of the game. So I mean, so 10:30. I mean, that's a breakfast at like 5 a.m. or something like that to get. It's a weird and wacky way to do things.
Yeah, and that's also why I think too, and we'll talk about March Madness, of course, in a week when we get there. Look forward to that, of course. But those first games sometimes just get a little choppy starting off, and then it's like usually by the late afternoon, that's when you start see things kicking in. By 4 o'clock, the guys it's not that much out of the routine, but early start time here, like you said, the turnover factor for UMass not ideal because if there are any mistakes, they're the team more likely to make them. Richmond -118 to get a B grade play according to the model, and would lean under, especially if you're up in the 140s. Where the number is right now. 1 p.m. Eastern, Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Florida State, 9-22. And I mean, I think we didn't think it would be a banner year for Florida State, but I don't know who saw this coming. From opening night, it was bad for Florida State. And here we are, what might be their closing game here. Toss-up game. Model says that Georgia Tech wins this 53% of the time. The model would give Georgia Tech a C grade play at the current price of -108. I lean Georgia Tech. I think we're getting a little bit of value on Georgia Tech because I think there's just like, oh, Florida State beat Miami. It's like, that was one game, and I don't think Florida State's that good. So I think there's a little bit of value in Georgia Tech, but it's not the most comfortable play. Jake will tell us a little bit why we're not extremely high on Georgia Tech. Again, that's kind of a lean, but the stronger play that we like the best here is the under 146.5. We just got through talking about the earlier tips and how that can mess with people's routine. You're starting to get a little bit further away from this as this one moves on, but it's still pretty early here in the day. Most teams, play at night during the week. You've got that aspect of it. You've also just got the fact that, neither offense is great. And the best unit on the court is going to be Georgia Tech's defense. So that favors the under. On top of that, you've got a Florida State team that does play a little bit more up-tempo, but Georgia Tech is not going to try to play in it. They're going to try to slow this down. I think we end up in the low 140s, 146.5, just too high. Model says 142.5. You always have to be careful about late game fouls, especially in tournament situations. That's kind of the fear here. But these neutral site games, you sometimes see teams just come out and throw up a ton of bricks, especially the daytime games. So just a lot more ways this goes under this high number than over. Jake, what do you got?
Yeah, Florida State. Leonard Hamilton did not see a year like this in his repertoire at Florida State. It's kind of scary. You hope better luck next year. I hope. Yeah. I like basketball when they're good, especially ACC basketball, because it's just a fun style of play watching them play. But with this game, you got Smith for Georgia Tech, who just got hurt on 28th. What was that? Saturday, something like that. He is their leading assist guy, second in rebounds as a guard. He really quarterbacks that offense, helps out a ton. I think we're going to see that added with a 1 p.m. start where we're going to get a lot of just slow, not sure what to do. Georgia Tech in the first half, they may figure it out towards the end because weirdly having him sit out helps their free throw percentage a ton because he's like at 44% or something crazy.
Wow.
So maybe that improves in the second half and they pull it out late, but I just don't see a lot of points happening here. I mean, Florida State kind of got off to a rough start to the year with some injuries and some guys redshirting. I just don't know that they've got the talent. I mean, they're better from the free throw line, and they don't turn the balls near as much. So it might, I don't know, they might pull this out, get one more game out of this ACC tournament, but I don't think it's going much farther than that. I lean Georgia Tech, but the under is a great play. I don't think there's much offensive talent on this floor.
Yeah, if this gets up to Georgia Tech plus 107, that would be an A grade. And I kind of think, Jake, you and I are about the same page that minus 108, not a bad play. At plus odds, it's probably hard to pass up if it gets to plus odds. But at minus odds, it's like kind of like, yeah, that's the way I would lean. Just don't love it. Georgia Tech, 2 of their 4 best players out, including 2 of their better defensive players, with Smith and Maxwell now. I think we're getting a little bit of an overreaction there in that I think they've still got some other depth pieces on defense that still make them, again, the strongest unit on the court. It's just not as strong as it was fully healthy. So I think that's why this total has gotten higher. So I just think that people are valuing the defense that's lost a little bit too much. It matters, but I don't think it matters. Again, the model knows these guys are out, and readjusting everyone else's minutes still says that the Georgia Tech defense is still good enough to handle a pretty weak Florida State offense. And Georgia Tech's offense hasn't ever been anything good this whole season, healthy or not. So, the injuries don't really affect that in the sense of their offense is still in trouble. Like you said, you've lost your assist guy, but you've also lost a bad free throw shooter. So it's like offensively, they've always been challenged. It doesn't change anything. It makes their defense worse, just not as much as the number indicates. So we like the under here, especially with the early tip and that neutral court. Model is bringing those numbers down for these neutral court games because teams tend to shoot a little bit worse there than they do in their home barns. One other afternoon game here. Talk about an early tip time, 2 p.m. Eastern, but 11 a.m. local time out in Las Vegas. Abilene Christian and Cal Baptist. We've got the under 140.5 on this one. Abilene Christian plays a little bit faster, but Cal Baptist is one of the slower teams in the country. They're really going to try to take the air out of the ball. And on top of that, the best unit on the court is Cal Baptist defense. Second best unit on the court going to be Abilene Christian's offense. So it's going to be a clash of styles there. Cal Baptist didn't have much offense. That's probably why they play a little bit slower. Model says 137 for the total here. I don't think we get to 140. So we got the under in this one. And what should be a really tight contest, kind of talking about this a little bit, it's in the daytime. It should be a tight game, so it should get your attention. If you're at work and you're looking for something to keep an eye on. Model says that on average, Cal Baptist wins this by 0.4 points. They win it 51% of the time. Right now, they're slight favorites, and I think that's probably right. I mean, I'd slightly lean that way, but I mean, this is a coin toss game between 2 teams that are pretty similar. Again, I would give a slight edge to Cal Baptist, but not by much. I don't know what's going to happen with regards to the side. I don't want to touch it. I just think under here. Again, early tip time for them locally. And again, a slow pace from Cal Baptist and a good defense from Cal Baptist. I think we stay in the 130s on this one. Jake, what's your take?
Yeah, I hate both these teams. I just don't like them. They're both coming.
If you went to these schools, Jake doesn't hate you. He just hates the university as a whole.
Yes,
I guess
it's everything about it. No, but really, they kind of stumbled coming into the last part of the year. They put this one on early because they know nobody's really going to care. They're hoping to buy some eyes. It's a toss-up game in my opinion. I love Cal Baptist, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen from like a victory standpoint. These 2 teams are very even. Abilene Christian doesn't turn the ball over too much, but they don't do much with it when they do have it. They're not a great shooting team at any point, and they just really, really don't like open shots. They don't really get the point of defense at times too. They're very aggressive. They steal a lot. They get a lot of turnovers, and that's where a lot of their points comes from. But after that, they give up wide open shots. They go for it and then let you have whatever you want. Cal Baptist has some offense to go with them, but not a crazy amount. They get too dependent on the 3, and they shoot way too many of them. I think it's nearly 40% of their points comes from 3. So cold night away from losing this by a lot. Much, and they play slow. This game's going to go under because there's going to be stretches where Cal Baptist goes cold, but they don't quite turn the ball over. So Abilene Christian's offense is not going to be able to do much, and I think we get low 130s here.
Yeah, key to this game for Cal Baptist, like you said, not turning the ball over. You made a great point there about Abilene Christian. Why their defense is so bad is because they're going for the turnover, and when they get it, it works, and when they don't, it doesn't. And that's kind of why their pace is a little bit faster because they can sometimes get quick points. But Cal Baptist is a team that's built to protect the ball, kill the clock, that sort of thing. Probably not going to turn it over a ton. They're not going to try to, they're going to do everything they can in their power to prevent ACU from getting those turnovers, from getting those quick points, because they know if they force ACU into a half-court offense that they've got the advantage. So, it's a relatively simple game plan for Cal Baptist. ACU is not a good enough team. I think they can't execute it. Like I said, I would lean Cal Baptist here. It's just at minus 115. It's just not that exciting. Model says that at minus 102 is the correct price, so we need plus 119. I might be a little bit softer than that on it. I could get into more plus odds. I'd probably take Cal Baptist, but minus 115 is just not that exciting. I don't think there's a ton of value on it versus the under here, because again, Cal Baptist, I think they can kind of control this, and they want to play this game as slow as possible. And I just don't think ACU is going to be able to force them out of that. 6 p.m. Eastern, Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. Speaking of disappointments, Notre Dame 11-20, and potentially last game here with a coach that's been with them for 20 years now. Something like 25. I don't know.
It's been forever.
In a long time. I'm gonna take the dog here. I'm gonna take the Fighting Irish at plus 245. The odds are just too good to pass up here. Again, you talked about with scaling on these money line picks. This is scaling a little bit less than a unit to win a little bit more than 2. All of the plays are scaled to return 3 units. So if it's even money, it's 1.5 to get 1.5. If it's minus 200, it's risk 2 to win 1. If it's plus 200, it's risk 1 to win 2. So we're kind of having that sliding scale, same sort of style that I use in baseball, in order to have a little bit more on the favorites, a little bit less on the dogs. So it's not risking a ton here. We're not putting a lot out on the line, but plus 245 is just too good to pass up. Notre Dame might win this. You never know how the whole last game with the coach we love, that sort of thing, is going to play out. Virginia Tech's just kind of all over the map. Their offense is so good, but if they don't, they've had nights where they just don't show up offensively and they really struggle. If they show up offensively, they should win this game, but you just don't quite know. That's, of course, all they've got going for them. And I don't know. I could be crazy, but the last month or so, I feel like I've seen Notre Dame probably more times than anybody should, unless you went there, and they've impressed me. They've looked pretty competent. They've looked a lot better here this last month than they looked previously. That's, mostly reflecting the numbers, and that they've overperformed the model expectations in the last month, whereas Virginia Tech has underperformed them. I swear what I've seen with my eyes with Notre Dame has been they've sometimes played full games well. They've sometimes only played halves well, but they've just looked a lot more competent than they looked early on in the season, where they looked truly lost. Early on in the season, I would have said Virginia Tech wins this by double digits. But the way Notre Dame's been playing as of late, I think they can hang around, maybe pull it off. I'm going to grab the dog here at plus 245, just too good to pass up. Model says on average, Virginia Tech wins by 6.1. So the plus 6.5, a little bit of value on Notre Dame. I'd really be waiting for 7. Would be kind of more of a number that I'd be interested in playing. Model says 8 would be an A grade, but again, 7 would be where I'd start thinking about it. Otherwise, like I said, just put a tiny bit here on the dog, maybe. They got a chance to pull it off. Total is 144. Model says 144. Jake, what do you think?
From a totals perspective, I lean over. These teams both shoot the 3 ball, both shoot very well. They can very easily get hot, both get teams in the 70s. It's not going to be hard to get over 144. Yep. But I think you're right. The smart play here is to play on Notre Dame, because you don't have to put that much on it for a good payout, because Virginia Tech disappears at times away from home. Their big wins, all their signature wins, have been at home. That just feels they're just more comfortable there. Their defense plays better. They're not going to quite have all that here, with especially traveling down to Charlotte. Both teams got a little bit longer of a drive than most, but Notre Dame doesn't make it easy on your defense. They're a very good shooting team. They don't turn the ball over whatsoever. I think it's 30% of their conference play ended on a turnover, but somehow almost lose the turnover battle because their defense is so bad. And that's where the risk comes in, because their defense does not play well whatsoever. They play slow to kind of limit the possessions. So I think that works well most times, but sometimes can work against them if they're going cold. I think for Virginia Tech, I hate to see Mike Bray go out like this. He's been a great coach. This has been just a rough year. Hope we can get a couple more games out of him. It'd be kind of fun to see them make a run and win the tournament.
And as you mentioned there, I think it's exactly why I said it's going to be about Virginia Tech going cold. It's not going to be about Notre Dame's defense. That won't be what does it. It's that Virginia Tech offense, just sometimes unprompted, just like you said, doesn't show up away from home. We always talk about a lot, right, about how I know that, everyone thinks their team, does better at home and terrible on the road. But all these college teams are in these big conferences have these really big splits. And like I said, Virginia Tech's no different. They played fantastic at home. They really struggled away from home. And Notre Dame, obviously not home either, so it's a neutral site, but it's just, one of those more add a little bit of variance, add a little bit of who the heck knows. And that's exactly what we want. We want a little bit of who the heck knows when we're taking these sort of odds. I want a coin toss. If you can give me a coin toss of plus 245, I take that every day of the week. This obviously is not a coin toss, but the more we can get it towards a coin toss, the more variance we can add, the better. And like I said, shooting a lot of threes, it kind of creates a little more variance. There's just a lot of ways this game can kind of play out, and who knows which way. And so the dog is the smart choice. I'm like you, I would lean over. It's not my favorite play. I think the concern about the over might be the pace. Like I said, Notre Dame really wants to slow this down. But when you look at it, both offenses are going to have an edge. And that's the bottom line. Virginia Tech will have an edge on offense. Notre Dame will have an edge on offense. That kind of leans towards a little bit more points, even if the pace is slow, because the quality of the possessions will be good. So we would kind of lean over, but think that the dog is probably the smarter play there. Wrapping us up here, late night, 10 p.m. Eastern, Utah Tech and SFA got an A-grade play here on the Lumberjacks, minus 126. They let us down last week when we had them on show. They got to overtime against their rival, Sam Houston, couldn't pull it out in the extra period. But Utah Tech is no Sam Houston. Sam Houston's the number one seed in the WAC. I mean, they're a pretty solid team. I talked about it last week. We backed Sam Houston a lot. They're a really good team. Utah Tech, I've got them almost 100 spots below SFA. It's better. It's easier travel for Utah Tech, I guess. But I mean, I think that SFA should be massively favored in this one. Model says the correct price should be minus 219. So anything 175 or better is an A-grade play. It's a massive edge. We see these from time to time here in college basketball with the money line. We saw them in baseball. Just roll with them. I'm not putting any more on it than any other game. I'm still following the same formula. It's just a strong play, I think. So A-grade play. I want to make sure everyone, I think SFA is the right side here at a price like this. Model says that they should be favored by 5.3. So if you're looking at the spread, minus 2, also a great pick to make. Minus 2, minus 126, whichever one. I think SFA is the play here. Pace-wise, it'll be a little bit faster, but SFA's got a much better offense and a much better defense. I don't know. It's that simple to me. I'm wondering maybe if we're getting a little bit of a value here because we faded SFA last week on that road trip out to, I believe it was Utah Valley was the one they were playing in that one. And we talked about at the time how it was a horrible spot for SFA with the overtime and the travel and the altitude, all those things. And SFA got beat by like 40 or something. I mean, it was like a disastrous game for them. And we talked about it was a terrible spot. I wonder if we're getting some value because that's the last thing people remember was that game. But let me say that was about the spot and not that, home court's worth 40 points. It's just that was a snowball situation we talked about with the altitude, the tired legs, all that. We went over it last week. This SFA team is still much better than Utah Tech. And so minus 126, I think, is a gift. Total in this one is 151.5. Model says 148.5. So model would lean under. These have been two slightly over teams, though. So I'd probably pass on the total. Just focus on the Lumberjacks here. I think they're the right side, especially at these really cheap prices. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, giving up 113 to Utah Valley. I didn't see that coming. I didn't think
that's impressive.
But
that's a you ate the whole wheel of cheese impressive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's bad. I mean, they didn't even break 70. So I mean, SFA's that's a bad taste in your mouth. They're going to come out ready for this one. Yep. I think that was less about SFA and more about just scheduling a bad timing for a bad game or a terrible game. Actually, they've got the much better defense, much better offense, much better special teams if that exists in basketball.
Kicker looks strong over there on the side.
Yeah. I mean, their biggest issue is they foul too much and they don't really rebound that well on the defensive end. But Utah Tech is just going to have a perfect game to get this right. I think it's a great get right game for SFA. They turn the ball over too much. They shoot from deep and not very well and way too much. They don't do a lot on defense. They do get to the line a lot, so maybe buy some extra points. So that total, I lean towards the over just because the way the foul situation goes. And teams don't like the last game to end. So I think there's some extra fouls at the end of these kind of games before the season ends to get a few extra points.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I want to say about this game is I think this is a great – I think you said it really well, great get-right spot. We talked yesterday a little bit about that whole getting your legs under you sometimes. And this is a great one here for SFA to get their legs under them in a game that they should win and prep here for the next one. You don't want that first game. You want that first game to Goldilocks it. You want it to be just challenging enough to get the juices going, get used to the court, get your legs underneath you, that sort of thing. You don't want it to be so challenging you're working too hard. You don't want to play triple overtime games. But, you don't want to necessarily just go out there and win by, you probably do, I guess, win by 40. But, the easier the game is here, get them going is good. And that's what I think this is. I think this is a nice, easy victory for them for them hopefully to get rolling in the WAC tournament where they've also got some, bye situations here. So we'll play a rested team here in the next round. That's all the games we've got for you here. Again, a bunch more coming in the official picks. Check us out on Patreon for all those. Once all the TBDs disappear and we actually get team names there, I can model those out, predict those. But for now, a little bit of a weaker slate for what we know, but there's more games to come. Let's say so. Hit us up on Patreon. Otherwise, Jake, any parting words for the viewer?
No, here we go. The ball's starting rolling now. We're getting afternoon basketball. It's getting you ready for the weekend. It's going to be great.
And we'll finally now be able to have a show and talk a little bit about how yesterday went, because we'll have had a couple of these results and where it's like, right now it's like, I don't know how the day went, so it's a little more fun to kind of be like, to talk about in real time, the win or the loss or the heartbreak or the whatever that we just saw, right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in this episode of Picks the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can show the sports betting content provided on this channel. It's dropped right into your feed. Be back again tomorrow for more college basketball tips. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.